Jeffrey Epstein was a honeypot blackmail operation. He was running a honeypot blackmail operation, and he worked with intelligence agencies all across the world, including Mossad. There's no doubt that the Israeli government has videos and pictures of Trump doing horrific things with underage girls. There's no doubt. And now Benjamin Netanyahu, how do we know he didn't blackmail Trump and hold it over his head, say, hey, you're gonna do this regime change or these tapes come out. And by the way, the Iranians are saying if you do the attack, tapes will come out because they claim they have them. So we'll see if that's just a bluff or not. But when I look at this, man, it stinks to the high heavens. And we have a blackmailed pedophile president. We do. And so now look at how deep we're into this. All right, guys. So as the Jeffrey Epstein war is absolutely spiraling out of control and everything is getting worse by the day, we see that the Trump regime is now trying to get away with a bunch of nefarious tricks behind the scenes. So take a look at this. Breaking. It's being reported that the Department of Justice has taken down files, including the Epstein disclosure required under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, according to CBS. The total number of files removed appears to be around 47,000, accounting for more than 65,000 pages. The DOJ has not released a statement explaining why the files were taken down. CBS reported Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the department reviewed 6 million total pages, meaning that it initially released what it initially released constitutes less than half of the total. So they've always been violating the Epstein Transparency Act. They never met the deadlines. They never released the things unredacted that they were supposed to. They also illegally kept the names of the victims not redacted. So they fucked this up 1,000 ways to Sunday. They said they released them all. They only released like 50%. Now there's like millions more files that they're pretending like, oh, there's nothing left here to see. And now, of the limited stuff they did release, they're illegally pulling down 65,000 different Epstein files. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, what do you think is on those pages? Because I certainly have an answer, because we've seen this before. Remember when the first batch of Epstein files came out, and there was one page that showed Jeffrey Epstein had a Donald Trump-specific drawer, that he had pictures of Trump in there, and he had documents, presumably about Trump in there. And when that document came out, Trump obviously caught wind of it. He flipped out. He said, you got to pull that down. So they had posted it, and then they had pulled it down soon thereafter. Trump was definitely furious that people realized, hey, Jeffrey Epstein has a Donald Trump-specific drawer. Kind of crazy, right? The guy who ran Child Sex Crimes Incorporated has a specific drawer dedicated to you? Huh. Kind of wild, huh? So that's one example of stuff that was taken down. Another example of stuff that was never released is the Katie Johnson interview. Guys, they interviewed Katie Johnson 3 or 4 different times. This is at the time she said she was 13 and she was raped by Trump. Okay, she has detailed stories that she tells, other girls who were involved, Jeffrey Epstein directly being involved, Trump being abusive and also hitting girls. She told that story. The FBI thought it was legit. The FBI interviewed her at least 3 or 4 times.
The United States of America is a fucking pedophile! And the Israelis gathered blackmail on him through Jeffrey Epstein for fucking decades, knowing that if they could get that cocksucker into the fucking Oval, then they would finally get exactly what they have wanted for the past 47 years, which is to destroy Iran! That is the state of this fucking world.
So we also have this. President Trump told CNN that he is not worried whether Iran becomes a democratic state. So this is exactly what we saw as well in Venezuela, where, he was asked about it there, and he's basically, what are you talking about? No, I'm overthrowing the country to steal the oil and put hundreds of millions of dollars in my private bank account in Qatar. And then here, same thing. They ask him, hey, are there going to be like elections? Do you support that? And he's like, no, I don't really care about that. So, in other words, the facade is not even there anymore. There's no longer the veneer of seriousness or spreading freedom and democracy. It is just ruthless government by gangster. This is mobocracy that we're witnessing right in front of our eyes. So, huge news here. So the Washington Post is reporting that there's this army unit that was supposed to do an exercise, okay? And instead of doing the exercise, it was called off, which is now leading to speculation that they're going to be deployed to the Middle East. It's the Elite 82nd Airborne Division, and they're awaiting new orders since they canceled the exercise. So this is a big deal, and this is the first very clear-cut sign that we've seen that indeed there's going to be a ground invasion, okay? The other day we talked about how allegedly the Kurds were about to do a ground invasion and to try to take the country back. But that was a total lie. In fact, what the U.S. was doing was saying the Kurds were going to try to overthrow the Iranian government in the hopes that the Iranian government overreacted and started bombing the Kurds, and that would lead to a civil war. So in other words, it's exactly what I told you. Ultimately, what they want in Iran is a failed state. They want a system where, the country basically falls apart and Israel can be the sole power in the region with nobody able to hold them in check. So that was a devious, disgusting plan that they tried to do. Now it looks like they're actually potentially prepping here for U.S. boots on the ground. Of course, the whole thing has been illegal. Just the bombing has been illegal. But now they're talking about potentially putting boots on the ground, a ground invasion, which would be absolutely insanely illegal. Totally unconstitutional. It absolutely, in a world that made sense, would lead to an instant impeachment. But of course, with the Republican Party being a Kool-Aid drinking death cult, there are absolutely no guarantees, even if he follows through and does that.
One more thing I wanted to say about the election concerns is I think the war and the election rigging, like you have to tie those two things together, because Trump's MO is to pretend or create a national emergency to seize more power.
Yes.
And so I think part of the plan, one of the things they'll try is like, we're at war. We can't have elections, right? Yes. And he also floated immediately after he launched this war. He said, oh, Iran intervened. They were meddling in the 2020 election. And
they're trying to get Maduro, too, to say, oh, I stole the election.
So I think he also thinks the war will help him to be able to rig the midterm elections. And, ultimately, like, there's no easy answer to, like, what you do about that going in.
I think you just say what can be done,
And the hope is that he's so unpopular and the war's so unpopular that people just don't stand for it. I think that's the only thing you can really count on.
I think back to that story of Nixon in the White House, and there was massive protests. I guess it was over Vietnam outside, and they looked out the window and they were genuinely afraid that the people were going to get through the White House gate. They had to actually fear for their safety. So, like, before they actually do anything.
Hold back, yeah.
Yeah, and he said this about Ukraine, Crystal, you're right. He said about Zelensky, like, this guy didn't have an election. He didn't have an election because he's at war. Oh, so is that how it works? So if I have a war, can I? So this, like, he's piecing it all together. And like I said, he actually has floated like 6 or 7 different ways, 6, 7 different ways in order to try to steal it. It's horrible. My brain is so Gen Alpha-fied. It's the worst thing ever. But for real, though, like, that he is going to use one of this 7 or 6 different ways to try to steal the election, and it's no fucking laughing matter. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. And by the way, what does it look like if he's imagine like it's the midterms? The average for his polling is at like 32%. Mm-hmm. This war has dragged on. Fucking everybody's furious. We're in a massive recession. Gas is $5 a gallon, right? What does it look like when the Mad King in that instance tries to roll out one of his plans, right, to steal the election? Like, we're talking. This country's falling apart. It is like getting ripped apart at the seams, bro. I've never seen anything like this. Let me now go to this. So throw this up on the screen there. We have a new national poll by the Angus Reid Institute, and this is one of the worst polls for Trump of all time, with both the first and the second term in mind. So the approval rating overall is now 35%. That's like in the ballpark of what it was like after January 6th, okay? Then we also, when we get into some more specifics here, the airstrikes on Iran, only 32% of the country supports that. Boots on the ground in Iran, only 24% of the country supports that. And in this particular poll, it's actually the worst number for him when it comes to MAGA Republicans supporting war on Iran. This one actually has only 67% of MAGA Republicans support war on Iran. Among non-MAGA Republicans, it drops all the way to 40%.
Oh, wow.
And then among independents, it's 11% of independents support war with Iran. So this is, honestly, catastrophic for the regime.
Wow.
But the question is, when I see this, I immediately go to, well, how can they keep doing things that are this unpopular? And unfortunately, I keep falling back on, Because they don't plan on having a free and fair election, because he's got like 7 different ways that he's like literally like, you know, giving you teasers of each way that, whether it's an executive order or doing something with ICE or whatever, they're going to try to steal the election. And I don't think people have really, it's almost like, I know everything is crazy right now, but it's almost like the calm before the storm in a sense. Because when those midterm elections come around and he says, you know, the voting is fraudulent, I see the mail-in votes are fraudulent, now I'm going to send in ICE in order to seize the ballots, and like people are going to be like, holy fucking shit, like it's actually happening. And the second that they seize those ballots or those machines, that's it. As soon as you lose track of the, you know, the custody order for the ballots, that's it. Like then you don't know what the actual results are going to be. So this is what terrifies me, is that, and look, this is my conspiracy theory. I speculated Gallup stopped doing the tracking poll for the president's approval rating because I think they had like a 29% number that came in, and they were like, if we release this, he's going to target us, just like he targeted Ann Selzer in Iowa when she released a poll that he didn't like. He's going to sue us. He's going to try to bankrupt us. So they said, instead of releasing it, let's just opt out of this thing completely. Let's just not do presidential polls anymore at all. And so, I don't know, when I look at this, it's like, it's great in that people are waking up, but it's also terrifying in that they're not acting like they have to be beholden to the American people at all anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's really scary. Why did you have to bring that up? Now I'm going to have even more nightmares than I usually do. And of course, you know, while what you're saying is, I think, very convincing, we also should remember, and I'm not, you know, call me a lib. I'm sorry, but I don't equate I don't equate the Republicans and Democrats, but at the same time, the Dems are 100% enabling Trump.
All right, y'all, welcome to the show. I hope everybody out there is having a great day. But the updates I have for you about this war are absolutely, positively catastrophic. In fact, I'm running out of words to describe the depravity and just how horrific this moment is, and how all of us are currently living through history in the worst possible way. So I have a lot of stuff to get to, a lot of updates to give you. Let's start with this right here. So as the oil prices started skyrocketing and the market started tanking, Donald Trump began panicking and trying to basically like downplay how horrific the situation is. So he came out on Live Social and he said the following: short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iranian nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Only fools would think differently. President Donald J. Trump. So he came out and said that, which of course in turn only made people panic more, only made oil prices go up more, only made the stock market crash more, because as Ron Filipkowski points out here, here's Trump on January 22nd, 2020, when the CDC confirmed the first U.S. COVID case. We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine. So this is what Trump does when he's in these situations. He lies through his teeth. Okay, now take a look at this. Breaking: Dow Jones Industrial Average Futures open over minus 1,000 points lower, now down 4,000 points since hitting 50,000 for the first time on February 5th. So as of last night, laying in bed, we're seeing this information come in that the Dow had dropped all the way down to 46,453. There was a massive crash when looking at the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and this war going completely and utterly out of control. And I can also give you this updates as well. Last night, you had Asian markets absolutely collapsing. South Korea was down 7%, Taiwan 6%, Japan 6%. I believe this also went up. Japan, I believe, hit 7% or more. We had what's called a circuit breaker where they temporarily paused trading because the floor was falling out from underneath everybody. Okay, Australia was also down 4%. Breaking: U.S. stock market futures extend losses with the S&P 500 now down $1.3 trillion on the day, as U.S. oil prices rise above $115 a barrel. Now, since this happened last night, they have come back down a little bit. But as you probably all know, and you don't need me to explain to you, that shit is going to be temporary, dog. I absolutely see the price of oil skyrocketing even more. So the S&P was down 2.3, NASDAQ down 2.7, Dow Jones down 2.4, WTI crude up 26.5, Brent up 23%, natural gas up 9%. Okay, so we should see U.S. gas prices nearing $5 a gallon soon.
To solve the problem has to be for a more progressive tax system than we have today, and to give more people for free the necessities of life, like childcare, healthcare, other things that rich people can afford, that poor people have to scrim to give those things, have a higher minimum, and to pay for it with a progressive system, and hopefully, and I know this is, everybody always says this, knock out some of the waste, and maybe you don't have to raise too much the absolute level of tax, but we certainly have to have a much more progressive tax system, and that's the way to do it.
So this is a Wall Street guy, a lifetime Wall Street guy, a billionaire, coming out here, sounding the alarm and saying, look, if we don't implement Bernie Sanders policies right now, there's going to be motherfucking pitchforks in the street. There's going to be guillotines coming back. There's going to be riots. There's going to be instability. This shit cannot go on. It just can't go on. The fact that even he is saying this, he probably has information that even you and I don't have yet. And he knows this economy is a fucking house of cards. When the AI bubble bursts, everything is up in flames. There was already a job apocalypse for blue-collar workers with all the outsourcing of the factory jobs. And now we have the apocalypse coming for the white-collar workers with AI. And so what do people do when there are no jobs left? Like, what do you do? How do you feed your family? How do you pay the bills? How do you keep the fucking lights on? How do you buy groceries? And by the way, at the same time, grocery prices are rising. Inflation's going up. Unemployment's going up. We're fucked. We're fucked. And here's a Wall Street guy going, at the very least, we got to give people childcare and healthcare and do higher taxes on the rich and redistribute more. And now, why is it that when AOC says this, crazy pie in the sky, lefty communist freak, but when the Goldman Sachs guy says this, it's like, oh, being very sober-minded and rational. That's the thing. I mean, everybody trial and errors their way back to leftism because it's the only thing that actually makes sense.
The economic system that we have has done a great job creating wealth. Now, it's created wealth by increasing the value of assets, and so people with assets have gotten a lot richer. But the people without assets haven't participated. They don't have assets, so their assets aren't going up in value.
And I don't know what the billionaires don't get about those people are going to get mad. I mean, the CEO of NVIDIA and the CEO of Anthropic, they both said, tax me more.
Okay.
Because they're going to come after us with pitchforks. Read the room. Luigi is a hero. The guy who shot the healthcare executive.
Tragedy, yep.
Yeah, tragedy for that guy.
I haven't said these words in a long time, and I'll probably never say them again, but that's a good point from Bill Maher. All right. Again, with this same Q&A, reporter, do you think the map of Iran looks the same after all of this is done? Listen.
And do you think the map of Iran looks the same after this is all done?
That I can't tell you. Probably not.
Probably not. So now just casually throwing out there, we're probably going to steal their territory. We're going to break up their country. We're going to steal their territory. What happened? I thought all the Iranian diaspora in the U.S. were, oh, you're going to liberate us. You're going to give us freedom. You're going to give us liberty. Now he's saying, we're going to change the borders. We're going to steal stuff. We're going to steal land. We're going to take their natural resources. That's what we're going to... What happened? What happened? I thought we were the great liberators. I thought we were, doing something kind here, something positive here. No, you're admitting we want to remake the map. Now, by the way, as I pointed out, the ultimate goal here from Israel is to destroy Iran completely, make it a failed state, have open slave markets and warlords who control the country so Israel can expand and create a greater Israel and steal the entire Middle East. That's why Mike Huckabee literally said that the other day when Tucker asked him. He goes, look, in the Bible, Israel takes the entire Middle East. And Mike Huckabee goes, well, then they should take it all. This is where we are, y'all. We also have this one. Trump is asked about the elementary school that was bombed on day one of the war. And yet again, tells a bold-faced lie.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hexa?
This man lies like he fucking breathes. The ease with which he just lied. And I'm going to prove it in a second. We have confirmation of the opposite. But the ease with which he lies is like disturbing to me in the depths of my soul, man. Look at his face as he lies.
What I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hexa? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Even Secretary of War Crimes, Pete Kegsbreath, is asked, hey, is that true what he said? He goes, well, we're certainly investigating it. Even he can't bring himself to lie that shamelessly.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done. We think it was done by Iran. Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Oh my God. Now, as Ryan Grimm says, aside from the fact that it is now widely understood and accepted that the U.S. bombed the girls' school in Manab, the claim Iran struck it never made sense since it happened before Iran had even begun responding. Think about the extreme nature of the lie. He He thinks you're an idiot. He thinks nobody is going to look into anything. Now, by the way, we get this. Dropsite says, confirmed. Footage reviewed and geolocated by Bellingcat confirms U.S. Tomahawk missiles hit the girls' primary school in southern Iran that killed 180 people, most of them children. Researcher Trevor Ball notes Israel does not possess Tomahawk missiles. The United States does. So, in other words, the missile that was used for this strike is literally a missile that only the United States of America has. And you can actually see it here. Watch. See that? They actually do a freeze frame where you can see that right there? That's a Tomahawk missile. They know it's a Tomahawk missile. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This was a U.S. strike that killed all of these innocent, precious little kids. Day one of the war. Day one of the war. Absolutely disgusting. Now, they had the nerve to say, well, we don't attack civilians. We don't attack civilians. Keep that in mind as we go through the rest of these updates I have for you, because that is, again, an astonishing lie.
Christ is the immigrant, deported without due process. Christ is the senior, deprived of their Social Security benefits. Christ is the protester, kidnapped in an unmarked vehicle by plainclothes officers.
So that's it. That's the quote. Now, when I hear this, my mind immediately goes to, oh, I bet this was like a Tallarico fan who posted it, or somebody affiliated with the Tallarico campaign that posted this. Right? It's hey, look, yeah, we're campaigning. Here's some of the stuff we're saying. Like, we're proud of this type stuff, right? The reality, the Senate Republicans posted this, bro. And yes, I need you to understand, they posted this as if it's like scandalous and as if it's like unacceptable and crazy and weird. They posted this to be like, you believe this fucking guy? You believe what he just said? He just said Christ is the immigrant deported without due process, and Christ is the senior deprived of their Social Security benefits, and Christ is the protester kidnapped in an unmarked vehicle. You believe that shit? We are at the point now where the Republican Party is like openly demonic. They are openly evil. Like, they want people to know how depraved they are. They want people to know how ruthless and disgusting they are. They want people to know, like, we are the villains. They are embracing the villain role. They're embracing it. And somehow they think that makes them more appealing. Like, I'm sorry, at this point, all of these, like, Republican Twitter accounts are run by, like, 14-year-old groypers who, like, cut their teeth on motherfucking 4chan. That's what it looks like to me at this point. So James Tallarico saw this, and he responded, I approve this message. And it's like, yeah, of course. Then, wait a second. They respond to him, and they post this. It's him, and it says beta. It's a picture of him, and he's wearing a shirt, and it says beta. And, like, they're being like, beta? Following the message of Jesus Christ and Christianity? Following the message of the New Testament and the Bible, bro? What a fucking loser, bro. How fucking pathetic are you? You, like, want to treat people kindly? You want to show empathy and sympathy and, like, feed the poor? And, like, clothe the homeless and whatnot? Like, what a loser.
Where this administration has been so bad in both its open advocacy for corruption and wealth concentration that I'm like black-pilled on democracy at this point. I think we basically don't have one anyway. I think that we need a strong arm to get us pushed in the correct direction. I don't think there's a clean way of doing that. I think the start is that the Republican Party has to be treated like a criminal organization, and everyone who lied to facilitate their interest needs to be investigated criminally as well. I know that's a very like wide cut, but it's based, in my opinion, it's that or the country dies. And we're going to turn into Russia. We're going to turn into just this fetid, poor, hilariously unequal was-been of a country where you have a couple of oligarchs raping kids in their palaces and everyone else is trying to, keep the pipes from freezing in their outhouse. And maybe for 10, maybe for 100 years, unless we do something, and we might be running out of time to do it.
Yeah. And one of the things I felt very similar this entire second Trump term, because what I've come to understand more now that I never understood it before, I certainly understand it now, is like I get where the instinct of authoritarian leftism comes from. Because, you look at like what Cuba had to deal with the United States, like routinely trying to fuck the country, overthrow it, steal it back for the oligarchs. Like, you go, okay, yeah, I guess the leaders had to get their hands a little bit dirty and do some fucked up things just to keep their project alive, right? And so I understand that. I also, now when I look at China and I see like the centralization of power
certainly when it comes to their economic stuff. Obviously, I don't agree with the whatever restrictions on free speech and a free press and stuff like that. But when it comes to like centralization of power in terms of making economic decisions for the country, I look at that and I go, they just seem to be able to get shit done. Whereas here, even in a best case scenario, it's so fucking limp dick and like procedural in nature.
And
like
our infrastructure is falling apart. It's not like
Right,
they're still interested in nation building. We are actually falling apart at the seams.
Right.
And we were before Trump too. This is not just a Trump problem. There is a structural problem with our priorities in this country. We shifted everything towards financialization. The only thing we care about is making sure investors get steady returns on their investments. Everything else has been thrown to the wayside with a fraction of the money that we could have skimmed off the top of the stock market. Listen, we could still have billionaires. I don't want them, but we could have had them. All we would need to do is responsibly cut off a couple percentage points of the wealth that circulates in the stock market, and we could have been living in a fucking paradise. And I mean, again, Biden tried, right? The Infrastructure Act, he passed it through, the budget reconciliation. What has it done? It's done some good. It's done nowhere near enough. A tiny fraction of the amount we need to reinvest in this country, and that was the keystone accomplishment of an entire presidency. That's how far behind we are. It takes a president and years of advocacy to get passed through a budget bill a fraction of the work we need. Meanwhile, China just built 5 new cities. Just
right.
How do we compete with that?
All right, guys, there was some huge news that dropped earlier today that I wanted to share with you. There's this guy by the name of Joe Kent, and he is the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And he came out and he resigned, and he said specifically he's resigning in protest of the war with Iran. He said, quote, "After much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today. I cannot, in good conscience, support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this." So the reason why this is such a big deal is this is the first resignation from anybody in MAGA over some principled thing like this. J.D. Vance is like slurping Trump's ball sweat. Tulsi Gabbard is humiliating herself on a daily basis, even though she pretended like she was all about being anti-war. Meanwhile, now she's, a warmonger just like the rest of them. But this guy coming out and saying this is a huge deal. Resigning is a huge deal. Now people are speculating that he's probably going to go on Tucker Carlson's show and basically like spill all the tea on what was going on behind the scenes. And of course, MAGA is absolutely furious because this is like real cracks in the foundation that are beginning to show in a way where now it's not just like the commentators and the pundits. Now it's people from within the regime going, you know what, this was fucked up and this was wrong. So that's kind of a big deal. So Caroline Leavitt was scrambling over this. And she released this long statement basically trying to like poo-poo what this guy was saying and like smack him down. And she said, "There are many false claims in this letter, but let me address one specifically, that Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation." And then she goes on to explain how like, well, of course there was an imminent threat to this nation. He's not telling the truth. All right, ready for this? What was it, like a week ago or some shit? She posted this long thing and she ended it with, "To be clear, no such threat from Iran to our homeland exists, and it never did." So this is like, with the insane stupidity and incompetence of this regime, they don't even realize they're contradicting themselves from one day to the next. And so they don't know whether they're coming or going. They're running around like a chicken with its head cut off. Meanwhile, this guy, Joe Kent, he's going to come out. He's going to tell his story. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely catastrophic for them. The one thing about what he did, though, which is sort of bullshit, is that he only blames Israel for this, and he tries to, like, almost, like, excuse Trump completely and put all the blame on Netanyahu and all the blame on Israel, and I view that as, like, complete bullshit.
To address the farm labor shortage, Trump administration turns to migrant workers. As the president's immigration policies squeeze an already tight supply of farm labor, the Trump administration is making it cheaper to hire foreign farm workers. For years, the agricultural sector has faced a tight labor market as farm workers age and fewer new immigrants and younger Americans are willing to toil in the fields. Top Trump administration officials vowed that mass deportations would help, leading to higher wages with better benefits and a 100% American workforce. But the administration has quietly acknowledged in recent months that its immigration raids and crackdowns on the border have aggravated the issue. Oh, really? Shocking. So it has instead turned to an alternative source, making it cheaper for farmers to hire immigrant farm workers on temporary visas. So in other words, let's allow the immigrant farm workers, but let's also make them slaves. Let's also make them indentured servants. Let's also lower their wages. Let's allow the criminal employers who hire the undocumented immigrants, let's let them get away with highway robbery. Let's do that. Many farmers have celebrated those changes made to an increasingly popular visa program known as H-2A, noting the difficulty in hiring American workers and tough economic conditions for the industry. But immigration hawks and labor unions alike are opposed, arguing the move will only increase the share of foreign workers and hurt native workers and suppress their wages. The simmering debate underscores how some of the administration's top goals of reducing immigration, keeping food prices low, and helping American workers may inevitably conflict. Oh, you don't say. This is literally like day one shit. And for them to act first and then go, oh shit, it turns out there's consequences to my actions. Oh, is there really? Did you just figure that out all by yourself, you big boy? Donald Trump, you're a big boy, aren't you? Here comes the train. Choo choo. Like, what the fuck is this, bro? How did the people around him, really? None of you people fucking thought this through? Now there needs to be a New York Times article about it. Like, it turns out there's pros and cons. There's trade-offs. There's positives and negatives. Like, yeah, with any policy planning to take away HIV medicine from people in Zambia to pressure the government to hand over minerals. That's what they're working on. Ready? So this is in the New York Times. U.S. considers withholding HIV aid unless Zambia expands minerals access. A draft State Department memo outlines ways the Trump administration may ratchet up pressure on the African country by ending health support, quote, on a massive scale. The State Department is considering withholding life-saving assistance to people with HIV in Zambia as a negotiating tactic to force the government of the southern African country to sign a deal giving the United States more access to its critical minerals. Quote, we will only secure our priorities by demonstrating willingness to publicly take support away from Zambia on a massive scale. A draft of a memo prepared for Secretary of State Marco Rubio by the department's Africa Bureau staff says a copy of the memo was obtained by the New York Times. Some 1.3 million people in Zambia rely on daily HIV treatment that is provided through the decades-old U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, known as PEPFAR, and on tuberculosis and malaria medications that save tens of thousands of Zambian lives each year. The Trump administration is considering whether to significantly cut assistance as soon as May to increase pressure on Zambia, the memo says. So when you do this, everybody hates you. When you do this, you become a pariah. When you do this, you are destroying any long-term potential you have of having any kind of deals with these countries, never mind like super exploitative imperialist style deals. And so on the other hand, so we do this. On the other hand, China comes in and they goes, hey, would you guys like some roads? How about, would you guys like some hospitals? What do you think about some hospitals? And so they do this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative, where they went to a bunch of different places, built a bunch of infrastructure out. And so they're doing like the modern iteration of empire, where it's like, well, what if I actually helped you? And then in return, you give us access to your natural resources and we become closer as nations. And that's why you have a scenario now where everybody's running into the loving arms of China. By the same token, the U.S. constantly puts our middle finger up to our own allies, right? Where we launch a trade war against them and hit them with a bunch of tariffs and make a deal with them and then don't abide by the same deal we made with them and rip up treaties and back out of agreements and change our mind from one day to the next. And we become, you cannot take the word of the United States seriously. You can't work with us. You can't work with us. And so now the end result of what we're doing here is hundreds of thousands of people being killed. We know that with the cuts to U.S. aid in general, we're talking about millions of people being killed. The malaria medication, the HIV medication, all the different kind of stuff. Millions of people killed. They don't care. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them. Because all they care about is power, control, dominance, hegemony. That's all they care about.
You also have, there's this place called Dimona, and it's allegedly where Israel has their like illegal stockpile of nuclear weapons. They've never like admitted to having the weapons, but everybody knows that they have the weapons, and that's where they keep it. And so, people are speculating how much damage was done to this place. Was the attack successful? Israel clearly wasn't prepared for this. It's very obvious that like Iron Dome is failing massively. The interceptors are running low, and this is why there's definitely panic both with Netanyahu and with Donald Trump right now. So massive damage there as well. And man, did we get some terrifying shit from Trump today. So he posted just recently, if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. So he's threatening to take out all of the power in Iran. That's what he's threatening to do. Now, by the way, that, of course, would be a colossal war crime, but he's still threatening to do it. The craziest part about this is he has to know they will not comply with that. There's a 0% chance that they will comply with that, right? And so if he actually follows through on the threat, think about where we're going to be. Because you had the Iranian government, their spokesperson came out and said, if Iran's fuel and energy infrastructure is attacked by the enemy, all energy infrastructure, information technology systems, and desalination facilities belonging to the United States and the regime in the region will be targeted. So we are on the brink of a sort of event which could render the Middle East completely and utterly uninhabitable. And we're also on the brink of, by far, the worst oil and gas crisis we've ever seen, and like a Great Depression. Okay? That's what we're on the brink of here. Complete and utter devastation, destruction, basically, taking off the board completely the potential of any oil and gas from the Middle East, where so much oil and gas comes from. This is where we are. And to have threats out there like, I'm going to attack all your power plants, really? Iran is a country of like over 90 million people. You're going to knock out the power for all of them? I mean, we're dealing with a complete psychopath here. It is bone chilling to watch this unfold. And it's also crazy to me, again, that you don't have like where are all the cries for impeachment? Where are all the cries for removal? Locking them up? Like, this is so crazy.
Trump has been issuing insane threats over the past few days, basically saying, you better open that Strait of Hormuz, and if you don't, there's going to be hell to pay. So he said the following, quote, you will soon find out what will happen with the ultimatum on the power plants. The results will be very good. There will be the total destruction of Iran, and it is going to work great. So casually saying, and I quote, there will be the total destruction of Iran, and it is going to work great. That sounds more like a serial killer than a president. Now, by the way, if you do this, all you're doing is destroying the lives of innocent civilians. That's all you're doing if you do this. So Trump is saying, open the Strait of Hormuz or this happens, okay? Now, he said this basically knowing there's a 0% chance they're actually going to open the Strait of Hormuz. But he said it anyway, okay? So the IRGC comes out and responds to this and says, if the U.S. threats regarding Iranian power plants are carried out, the following punitive measures will be carried out immediately. Number one, the Strait of Hormuz will be completely blocked and will not be opened until our destroyed power plants are rebuilt, which could take a very, very long time, by the way. Number two, all power plants, energy infrastructure, and information technology of the Zionist regime will be destroyed. Number three, all similar companies in the region that have American shareholders will be destroyed. And number four, the power plants of the countries in the region that host American bases will be our legitimate targets and destroyed. So, in other words, if you target our power plants, we're going to do a tit for tat. We're going to do an eye for an eye. We're going to take out, the Gulf Arab power plants, and we're going to be this much closer to rendering this region uninhabitable. Okay? Then you're looking at a refugee crisis, the likes of which we've never seen in our lives. You're looking at a guaranteed new Great Depression. Okay? Again, we are playing with fire here where we are one step removed from out-and-out nuclear warfare. That's where we're at. And I guarantee you the Trump regime has been talking about that behind the scenes, because this is a guy who in his first term floated nuking a hurricane because he thought it might stop it in his tracks. Iran closes the door permanently. Their foreign minister came out and he said the following. Listen to this.
I think the question of talking with Americans or negotiation with Americans once again would be on the table, because we have a very bitter experience of talking with Americans. We negotiated with them last year in last June, and they attacked us in the middle of negotiations. And again this year, they tried to convince us that this time is different. They promised us that they don't have any intention to attack us. And they wanted to resolve Iran's nuclear question peacefully and to find a negotiated solution, and we finally accepted. But again, after 3 rounds of negotiation, and after the American team in the negotiation, said itself that we made a big progress, still they decided to attack us. So I don't think, talking with Americans anymore would be, on our agenda anymore.
Our reputation finally caught up with us. Trump's signature move is to lure people into fake negotiations and then attack them. He did that with Qasem Soleimani, lured him with fake negotiations and then murdered him. Okay, this is what they did in the so-called 12-day war. Acted like, we're getting somewhere with our negotiations, and then attacked them. It's happened time and time and time again. You cannot trust a country that acts like that. And you cannot trust a country that will rip up a treaty nonchalant. You cannot trust a country that will randomly slap tariffs on you for no reason whatsoever on a whim because Trump woke up on the wrong side of the bed. You can't trust a country that pulls out of the World Health Organization and pulls out of the Paris Climate Agreement and pulls out of the Iranian nuclear agreement, even though they were following it perfectly. You can't trust a country like that. And now finally, it's like we ran out of runway, and now the world has, woken up, and they go, wait, why would we work with you when every time we think we're getting somewhere, you stab us in the back? There was reporting Iran agreed to the strictest terms. 0 enriched uranium pile. 0. And guess what? We attacked them like a couple hours after they agreed to the strictest terms possible. I mean, this is just, it's embarrassing. It's humiliating. We are a joke on the world stage. I need you to understand that. People are running into the loving arms of China because they see those guys are psychos. They don't, abide by their word. We literally act like the untrustworthy, malignant, narcissistic fucking drug addict, right? Who is asking you to, hey, can I borrow $20? But meanwhile, they already owe you like $500. And they go, I'll pay it back, man. I promise, just one more time, man. Like, you just can't trust us. Trump now claims Iran has been defeated. Now, with the death of Iran, the greatest enemy America has is the radical left, highly incompetent Democrat Party. So he's declaring again, the war's over. He said this over the weekend. And then he goes, now we do the real war with the radical left Democrats. They're the real problem. They're the greatest enemy America has. Oh my God, bro. Now, you know what this rhetoric usually leads to, right? This rhetoric is just classic dictator rhetoric, where like, the domestic enemy is an actual enemy to the state, and so you need to lock them up. You need to not tolerate any dissent whatsoever. That's what this is. That's what this is, okay? And on that point, what else was he reposting over the weekend? Look at this. 3rd term for Trump as a reward from stolen election. So somebody posted that on Lie Social, and then he reposted it. 3rd term for Trump as a reward from stolen election. So again, he keeps telling you. He keeps saying what he's going to do. And a lot of Democrats are just shoving their head in the sand and pretending like he's not saying it. No, he's saying it. We need to react accordingly. We need to be prepared for this. He has like potentially 6 different pathways where he's going to try to steal the midterms and the 2028 election, assuming he's alive. Okay? And people need to wake up to that fact, man.
They had an agreement. They
had some kind of an agreement, or there was some kind of an understanding. It was clearly not a secret to him.
My favorite thing is Kristi Noem goes, we're all so shocked. And then she says, everybody needs to pray for us. Pray for you? How does that prayer go? Dear Lord, please help Kristi Noem's husband to stop jacking off to big-ass titties.
To his own balloon fake titties. Oh my
Dear
God.
Lord, please, Kristi Noem's family needs help. He can't stop putting in some big-ass titties.
Yeah,
why would we pray for you?
She said the...
Dear Lord, like, what? The God's looking through the prayers he gets. Like, okay, kid with cancer, war, family got murdered, and it's like big-ass titties.
Balloon titties.
Husband. He's like, all right, I'm going to help this one.
Hot pants and balloon titties.
Oh my God, I hate him so much.
Oh my God,
they're all so evil.
It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. So anyway, I'm sure they're having quite a day. But no, I guess her comment to the press was like, the family was blindsided, which I wonder, do you think that she really had no idea?
I mean, it's not exactly something like, if you're trying to hide something from somebody, it's not like everybody in the family knows, like the kids are like, there goes dad again. He's walking around the house with his big ass teeth. He's walking around the house with his dad's going to grab a drink with some big ass teeth. They're like, Dad, put him away. I have a friend to use.
You never know. You never know what's going on in these households, Kyle.
So I think he has to try to hide it. You can't just walk around with it.
You don't think Christy knew?
No, I think Christy knew, but I think the rest of the family didn't, and he was trying to hide it more or less. Like she probably knew. I don't know if it was part of the deal when they got married or whatever, but she definitely figured out soon enough.
Part of the deal.
And the deal is like, you get to fuck Corey Lewandowski, and I get to have some big ass titties and jack off,
and
big ass titties.
In spite of big ass titties and Corey Lewandowski affairs.
So anyway, there's the challenge is find me a single Republican with a vanilla sex life or like some normal ass shit going on in their private life. Mission impossible.
Consider yourself a Zionist.
Do I consider myself Zionist?
Yes.
I believe, I revere the state of Israel. I'm proud to support the state of Israel. I deeply, deeply oppose Bibi Netanyahu's leadership, his opposition to the two-state solution, and deeply oppose how he is indulging the far right as it relates to what's going on in the West Bank.
Do you regret using the word apartheid to describe Israel?
I used it, I do in this context, that I said it and I referenced why I used it. A Tom Friedman article in that same sentence where Tom used it in the context of the direction that Bibi is going.
Not the current
and the
state.
concern, correct.
Okay.
And that is a legitimate concern I have that I share with Tom, that direction. If
I've heard enough. Why are we in this world where you cannot say a fact that Israel is an apartheid state? Why do we have Democrats that are denying facts in the same way that MAGA does? Kyle.
The main reason is the Israel lobby, right? And like the main one everybody comes to mind is AIPAC, but there's other elements to the Israel lobby as well. There's DMFI, Democratic Majority for Israel. There's other shell groups now. They're basically Israel lobby money that they call like Elect Chicago Women and like bland stuff like that. And that's the main reason. Like that has a stranglehold on the Democratic Party in the same way that obviously the entire Republican Party is too far gone on this stuff, and they're totally bought by the Israel lobby. And what Newsom is doing there is called the one bad man theory of politics. You know how there's like the one great man theory of politics? There's the one bad man theory where they go, look, if we just get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, everything would be phenomenal with Israel. But the problem with that is it's total BS. There's this guy named Yair Lapid, who's the opposition to Netanyahu, and he also is in favor of what's called the Greater Israel Project, which basically means Israel gets to crusade through the Middle East, basically steal the entire Middle East and create their own version of the Fourth Reich. Okay, so there is no, it is genuinely a problem with Israeli society. I just saw a poll earlier today. Up to 95% of Israelis support this illegal and offensive war on Iran. Whereas here in the U.S., the average is about 35% of people in this country support that stupid war. So we have a real problem here, and we do ourselves no favors by not like accurately describing it.
I completely agree. And you have this, now there's this narrative that if you say that Israel played a huge part in bringing us into the war, that's somehow anti-Semitic. But when I do a roll call on this, little Marco said it, little Moses Mike Grinder Johnson said it, Trump himself has said it, and Benjamin Netanyahu said it, where he said, my 40-year dream of invading Iran. But yet if somebody on the left, or this guy that left the Trump regime and ran home to Tucker Carlson. Yeah, Joe Kent. Mm-hmm. If they say it, then somehow it's anti-Semitic. And we have to live in a society where you can criticize governments. Democrats eyeing 2028 are ditching American Israel Public Affairs Committee money as voters turn against Israel's government. Booker, Newsom, Gallego, Shapiro, Bashir all distance themselves, making it a likely litmus test in the primary. So here's my question. If the Democrats are not clear-eyed and look in the camera and say, we do not support apartheid, we do not support genocide, Benjamin Netanyahu is a liar and a war criminal, and we are not going to partner with a war criminal because we already have a president that's a war criminal, and we're anti all of that. We're anti every single bit of that. And Tucker Carlson is making points in 30-second clips where I know a lot of people, that's how they consume politics in flyover states. Like, oh, he says he says that MAGA lost the message. And their whole thing now is, it was never about the man. It was always about the movement. We really are America first. How dangerous is it that Democrats do not have moral clarity on this to carve the way and incubate somebody like Tucker Carlson, who I think is going to run for president?
Yeah, I mean, shit, that's a whole can of worms that we can open up there. But I genuinely believe the Republican project is cooked post-Trump. I really think for a generation, Republicans are not going to be chosen by the American people because everything is, I mean, we're going to have a Great Depression. We're already in like World War III at the moment. But to your broader point here about AIPAC, the argument needs to be cut off all the money, cut off all the weapons, and sanction Israel. And what they're doing here is the Democrats are effectively trying to do a trick where they say, oh, yeah, we'll write off AIPAC. But it's like, okay, did you write off J Street? Did you write off all the other shell groups that effectively are Israel lobby money? Because the Israel lobby is adjusting. And now they're changing their name to random shell groups, and they're running ads for their preferred candidates where they don't even mention Israel. They're like hiding the fact that they support Israel. So they've adjusted, and they know you're still going to have candidates like Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker and Josh Shapiro. They are going to find a way to get that Israel lobby money because the Israel lobby knows, hey, these are people who will actually support us. And that's where we need to be sophisticated. And so we need to get right to the point. Do you support an arms embargo on Israel? Do you support cutting off all subsidies to Israel moving forward? And if they waffle on that, or they get it wrong, then we should have no interest in them whatsoever for being the standard bearer for the Democrats.
Now, you take Lara, for instance, when she was a girl, trying to spank her Dale was like a 4-minute ordeal because she's like, no, daddy, no, daddy, no, daddy, no. I'm sorry, daddy, I'm sorry, daddy. And then she'd get madder and madder, and she just couldn't bring herself to even bend over for me to be able to bust her butt. And I was like, honey, you got like 2 seconds, or you're going to get 2 instead of 1.
How are we losing to these fucking people, Kyle? How do we lose to these fucking people?
Pedocon theory is a theory like gravity is a theory at this point. There's a great video that I think it was Midas Touch put together like a couple years ago, and it's basically all about pedocon theory. And they just go like one after the other, after the other, after the other. You're like a dozen Republicans deep where it's like pedo. And at this point, it's like they all have something weird going on with sex, whether it's the anti-gay guys that love gobbling cock in a New Jersey Turnpike bathroom, or, you know, it's this guy talking about his daughter saying, daddy, don't spank me. And he's like, I'm going to spank you. Like, what is this, man? I don't know. You have some phenomenal theories on this that you should share with everybody. Yeah.
I think that I grew up in Mark Wayne Mullen State, and there's so much shame that kids, the number one thing they're taught is don't have sex until you're married. Like, not be a good person, don't lie, none of that shit. Because all you have to do is ask Jesus for it. So it's super like purity, abstinence culture. And in that just comes a lot of fuckery, a lot of people that are really messed up sexually. And the entire MAGA movement, all of these MAGA men, I mean, for sure, I think there's just a lot of DL. I think there's probably a lot of bi-curious situation where these men are watching porn after their wife goes to bed. They see a penis, they get excited about it, then they feel terrible, and then they terrorize the country. And I just think there's a whole Freudian dive into a lot of this. And I have so much empathy for anybody that feels like they need to be in the closet because of societal restrictions and judgment that comes from being gay or bisexual or whatever. But these people that browbeat gay people all day long, pass legislation to deny them equality, and then fetishize it at night. I mean, that's just pretty disgusting, Lindsey Graham.
To your point, we now need an absolute litmus test on the Democratic side. I don't want to hear from you if you're running for president if you're not saying we are going to jail all of these disgusting, degenerate criminals that are in the White House. I'm talking Stephen Miller. I'm talking Elon Musk. I'm talking Pam Bondi. I'm talking Donald Trump. I'm talking all of them. And of course, and I genuinely think that it is more likely than ever that we get sort of a Democratic renegade winner who comes out of nowhere, because the politics, as usual, is not going to work here. And the biggest mistake Obama made was saying, we're going to look forward. We're not going to look backwards when it comes to prosecuting the Bush era criminals. And a Democrat, we cannot afford. If that same mistake is made, we genuinely no longer have a country. We basically like elect an emperor for 4 or 8 years, and then they get to do whatever the hell they want, commit whatever crimes they want, go on a crime spree if they so please, right? And then there's no accountability. So we need that. I think we're ripe for that, though. So I'd be surprised if it wasn't somebody like a Graham Plattner, for example, who comes out of nowhere and ends up winning. Somebody who like really is touching every so-called third rail that is not really a third rail, but the establishment group thinkers are convinced is a third rail. You're going to call what happened in Gaza a genocide. You're going to say this is a World War III. You're going to say that there's Epstein blackmail on Trump and he was fucking 13-year-olds. Katie Johnson is one of them, right? You're going to have people saying these things. They're going to be the ones who get ahead. It's not going to be this milquetoast nonsense from Gavin Newsom or Josh Shapiro or any of them. Okay, so right off the jump here, let's talk about this war. So before the war, Iran was exporting 1.1 million barrels of oil at $47 a barrel, okay? And right now, they're exporting 1.5 million barrels of oil, so it went up, at about $120 a barrel. So as I've said repeatedly on the show, we basically are like a regime run by baboons at this point. This is government by whim of 12-year-old boy, because every single thing they've done has backfired massively. And so now you have Iran selling more oil at a higher price. And of course, the U.S. Unsanctioned the oil, the Iranian oil that was already at sea. So honestly, they've racked up dub after dub after dub as the U.S. keeps looking more and more pathetic. By the way, Trump keeps lying about all different aspects of this. Trump said that Iran gave us a little gift. They gave us a little gift. And apparently he was referring to Iran letting 8 oil ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, come to find out, the Iranian government immediately came out and said, that's a lie. We're not allowing 8 ships through. And then people checked like the radar systems and the tracking systems, and it's a lie. There is no 8 ships that were allowed through. So this guy is totally disconnected from reality. It's genuinely disturbing to watch.
If you were the majority, where were you? Where were you guys? Because there wasn't many of you that showed up to counter protest. And I feel like if this is so important to you, if you love President Trump, you might have wanted to be out counter protesting. And you didn't show up. You didn't show up there. You didn't show up to his birthday party. So where are you guys? If you're the majority, where? Like, I didn't see any of you guys really out. Also, forgive me, I have laryngitis, so my voice is all fucked up. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe think about that just for like a hot second.